Hi, Courtney. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm great.
Well, I'm super excited to have you on the show and learn from you as well. But can you tell our listeners in your own words, like who you are, what you do? What do you help women with?
Sure. I've often thought, like, how do I boil what I do into a sentence or a couple of words? And if I had to pick one thing, even though I do a lot of different things, it would be that I am a simplicity advocate. So I encourage women to simplify their lives for more clarity, for better health, more meaningful relationships, and just to get the chaos and the noise set aside so that we can all think about what we really want and do it.
I love that so much. And I think there's just so many parallels of, deciding what doesn't serve you in life anymore, what you want to let go of to really make space for what you do want. And that's the beautiful thing. It's not what you remove, really, it's what you make space for. So, can you tell us a little bit? Sometimes we teach the thing that we had to learn or the thing we had to overcome. So, can you rewind, a few years ago to how you got interested in this topic in the first place? And did you have some kind of lifestyle that really necessitated you to simplify and look into your life and what you want?
Yes, I'm going to go back more than a few years to 2006 when I was living in a home that was more home than I could probably afford, but I was making it work, working a job that had deadlines all the time, really high stress, had been in debt since I turned 18 years old. So my whole adult life. And I just thought that's the way it was. I'm always going to have credit card debt, car debt, student loan debt, all the debt. And because of that debt, I just always thought the answer was more, make more, work harder. But all that working harder made me want to buy more because I felt like I deserved more for working so hard. So I was really caught in this kind of vicious cycle that I think a lot of people are, even though it feels really normal, because that's what a lot of people are doing. And it all came to a screeching halt for me in 2006 after months of debilitating vertigo and fatigue and all kinds of weird symptoms, like my face was tingling, my hands were numb, and going through countless exams and neurological evaluations, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And it was really strange timing too, because at that exact moment, I was also training for a ride here in Salt Lake City, where I live, to raise funds for MS, because my boss at the time had MS. And for me, it was, of course, at first a shock and really scary, but almost immediately afterwards, it was kind of this invitation to ask, how am I going to live well with this disease? And I started researching and seeing what other people were doing and what really impacted this condition. And all my research kept coming back to stress. The more stressed you are, the more likely you are to have exacerbations and disease activity. And so I thought, okay, good. I'm just going to eliminate all stress from my life. And then I thought, okay, I'll eliminate the stress that I can control, because of course, most of the stress we have is perhaps out of our control. So I thought, what is in my control? What's the most stressful thing in my life? And I kept asking that question of things and removing them from my life. And I realized that the common thread in all of those things was simplicity. And by removing the things that were removing me from my life, I was able to discover more purpose, better sleep, and just a calmer way of living.
I love that theme. And it's so ironic that, like, in the heartbreak, even and devastation of a really hard diagnosis like that, I mean, look at how it changed your life and the purpose now you've stepped into to help other women do this. It's like it was like a blessing in so many strange ways.
It was. And normally, like, hearing that from someone else would annoy me, that they're always
Yeah.
looking on the bright side. We can get a little too cheery sometimes, which is not normally my style, but that is how I feel about this diagnosis, that it's one of the best things that ever happened to me because it, I don't want to say forced me, but it really invited me to slow down and question how I was living and how I wanted to live. Where prior to that, I was sort of on autopilot, like just do all the things you're supposed to do, which evidently in my eyes was be overworked, overextended, exhausted, and just worn down.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it came to simplifying your life, it sounds, like you said it in one sentence, but there's so much that goes behind it. And there's so many parts of your life, right, that can take time to ask yourself, like, is this needed? Is this what I want? How can I reduce? How can I do less? Where did you even start? And what was kind of the transitions? Like, okay, maybe I started here and then that started working better. And then I looked at this area and then this area. What was that kind of like chronological order for you?
Well, the first thing that I did was I changed the way I change. So I used to love to do like 21-day challenges, anything that could help improve some part of my life, but it would have to be fast and furious. I wanted results immediately. And I usually tried to do several things at the same time. And looking and reflecting, I saw that I was hadn't moved forward by trying to change that way. So this time I decided to only change one thing at a time and to focus on that change for as long as it took for that to kind of feel like the new normal, and then move to the next thing. And so the chronological order of how I changed all these different aspects of my life was, it started with food. I really looked at what I was eating and how I could simplify that and what might lend itself to me feeling better. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist. None of the information that I have was doctor recommended, but essentially I just experimented with lots of different things, like eating a raw vegan diet, eating a vegan diet, eating a vegetarian diet. And I finally settled on a mostly vegetarian diet with some seafood. Again, no science behind that, just how do I feel? What makes me feel the best? And I'm constantly kind of analyzing that. And then the next thing that I turned my focus to, which was very stressful in my life, was debt and becoming debt-free. And during that process, because I wasn't buying anything, because I was really putting all dollars towards debt, it was a great time to see the stuff that I had and see where all my money went. And I realized, which I didn't know before, is that that stuff, or clutter, as I like to call it, was stressful. And I never thought of it that way until I realized that it was always this constant reminder of my debt, my discontent, my thinking that I could buy myself into feeling any kind of way, like this will make me happier, this will make me more successful. Even though those words weren't going through my head when I was making those purchases, that looking back, that is what I was thinking. This will make me look this way. This will make me feel this way. And as I started to get rid of that stuff, as we were paying down debt, I started to enjoy the space and the not taking care of as much stuff, that feeling. And so it was really food, debt, clutter, and then work. And all of this wasn't like a 2 or 3 month deal. It was years. But looking at, now that I had paid off a lot of debt, did I really need the job that I had? And could I do something different? But each change I made gave me more inspiration and motivation for the next change. And just to have that permission to say, like, what if I did things differently? Wouldn't it be crazy if I tried this or I did this? It was so freeing and exciting that even if everything didn't work out as I thought it might, it was still worth the investment of time.
Mm. I love that. And there's such a healthy sense of curiosity that you speak of. It's really this experimentation. It's not like what some guru tells me to do. Like, I'm just going to try things out and then see which one really helps me feel the best and really go from there. And I'm curious, you're mentioning like this status quo, this life lived, checking all the boxes before, and then you start really, reorganizing it to you, to what you want, to what you desire, to what really fulfills you and makes you feel best. Did you feel like any of the decisions you made with this, these different transformations in all these different areas got you any maybe not criticism isn't the right word, but just people questioning you?
Yeah, I definitely got a few raised eyebrows. I mean, especially when I would do, I think probably the time that people gave me the most, not pushback, but I think it was curiosity. Even though sometimes it would come across negatively, there was way more positivity in the response, was when I started experimenting with dressing with fewer items of clothing. That's a real, I guess, hot topic for people. But for me, I wanted to just really see what it would be like to dress with fewer items of clothes, because my closet was just bursting at the seams all the time. And I recognized that I was only wearing the same like rotation of items, but I still had all of these other things in my closet. So I challenged myself to dress with a lot less, and started hearing about it, for sure. People saying I could never do that. That's crazy. You're crazy. But as it turned out, it was something that those people that thought it was crazy usually circled back to within about a year, and then thought, why did I wait so long to try that?
That's so interesting. And I heard this once from Gretchen Rubin that, you could have like 5 pairs of like black pants, but you only really like one or two. So every time you go in your closet, you kind of have to like filter, is this the pair I like? Or is this the one with the hole, something weird? Is it the one that like is kind of loose on my waist? And it creates like already this lack, you have to make all these decisions in the morning, especially then if you take the opposite of that and you only keep those 2 black pants that you love. You walk into your closet and you're like, yes, I know I'm going to be taken care of. This looks great on me, and you just kind of put it on. And you went, took this concept so far, you wrote a book about it. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So the challenge itself is called Project 333, and that's actually the title of the book. And the premise behind it is that you pick 33 items for 3 months, including clothes, jewelry, accessories, and shoes. And you don't count things like underwear and sleepwear. And also you don't count workout clothes, as long as your workout clothes are working out. So we all, or a lot of us, live in some variety of yoga pants these days. But if they're not going to yoga, then you count them in your 33 items, and then assess after those 3 months, how that worked out, and make any changes that you need at that point. And one of the fascinating things that came up, not just for me, but for a lot of people, were how many emotions we hold in our stuff. And you can really see that when you're dressing with everything, or I guess you can't really see it because you're so used to it. But when it's gone, you realize that, those pants that don't fit aren't bugging you anymore because they're not there. Or that shirt that somebody gave you that you don't necessarily like, but you felt guilty for having that gift. And so you put it in the closet and then you never wore it, but that guilt kind of hung on. There's so many little things that once the items are gone, that emotion is gone, and people feel a real lightness from letting go of that.
Hmm. I think it's so beautiful, like just the mantra of like letting go of things that don't serve you, because they do take up energy in your mental space, in your physical body, sometimes for certain things. And it really then could even prevent the thing that you do want from having space to come into your life. So I'm curious, you've spoken publicly also about this sense of simplicity into your relationship with alcohol, and, experimenting with removing that, and then, how you felt afterwards. So how did that come into play? When did that kind of come onto the table as well, for something to reevaluate and play with and experiment with? And, what did you learn?
I feel like I'm always learning still. But with this idea of removing things that remove me from my life, alcohol was at the top of the list in terms of making me not all the way me. Agreeing to like coffee dates or doing things or making commitments that I normally wouldn't had I been completely sober. I think I used alcohol a lot within business as an introvert to be more outgoing. I actually believed I was an extrovert for a really long time, and alcohol had a lot to do with that. And in January of 2019, after being on vacation for a few days and really going all in, drinks at dinner, going out afterwards, like more than I would normally consume, and just feeling kind of gross after the weekend, I decided to take a break, which I had done plenty of times before, but I was about a month and a half getting ready to go on a trip to Europe. And I thought, I'll just stop until I take this trip. And then, of course, I'll start drinking again, because I'm not going to go to Paris and not drink champagne. That doesn't make any sense. But as I got closer to that trip, I still had no real desire to drink. And I was really enjoying that I had gone past my usual 30-day break and just kind of reveling in that extra sleep and feeling really bright-eyed in the morning. And I thought, I'll just go to 100 days. And I never had a drink on my Europe trip. Still wasn't committed to stopping altogether. But I think once I hit 100 days, there was something just like, I just knew that I wasn't going to go back to it. And as it turns out, even though that thing that I resisted for the longest, and even resisted all through that kind of taking a break, resisted saying it's gone, when I finally did, that was the one thing that simplified my life the most, like without question. Just decision fatigue, overspending, feeling like I wasn't myself. I mean, I think that was the worst of it, because I could tell within half a glass of wine that I was softening and just becoming less who I was. And while, of course, at times that felt really good, it was completely opposite of my overall mission to be healthier and more calm and happy.
I love how you phrase it that way. Like, I think we have this authenticity and this persona that we embody. And even if that person is taken out of the, driver's seat just for a little bit, it feels like we aren't living in integrity with ourselves, right? And it just feels really off. And like, the next day you're like, even if nothing happened and everything was fine and you didn't drink too much, it was like, who was that? That wasn't exactly me. And I know it's almost like a sense of coming home sometimes. Like, I am always here. I'm always present. I'm always here in my full integrity. That can really feel a big sense of comfort and a big sense of just peace of knowing that. It's so interesting that you shared this story in this kind of chronology, because I find that, some people obviously have very, serious and more complicated relationship with alcohol. And it can be a big red flag that then, institutes, wanting to make a change. But oftentimes I find that women in that like middle ground, that gray area, it is like first all these other changes. It's the health changes, it's the personal growth, it's the mindfulness, maybe, getting into like a spiritual practice. And you keep kind of peeling back the layers of getting closer and closer to who you want to be. And you have all these different ways of doing that first. And then like alcohol is almost kind of like that last incongruency, because it's such a strange one and so socially almost unaccepted to remove, like, unless you're really facing that rock bottom. How did that feel to remove it? You talked about networking events, business, becoming more social when you're talking. How did in the social lens, you've already made all these changes and kind of had to learn to not worry so much about what people think, but how did that one come across for you with your social world?
Well, I think what you just said is really key, in that I had worked on the mindset behind it long before I got to that point, which was, I wasn't preparing for that. It just happened to be really fortunate, because by the time I did, I really didn't care. So if anyone said anything about it, it didn't bother me at all. And if somebody offered me a drink, I would say, no, thank you. I didn't feel attacked by that. And if people asked me a second time or were like, come on, I would just say, I said, no, thank you. And if they were closer people and asked me questions and wanted to know, even though I didn't think it was my responsibility to explain, I knew they were curious. And so I wanted to share that, because like all of these changes, I want them to be more socially acceptable. So if somebody decides it's their time, they don't have to muddle through all of that, the questioning, and is this okay? And will I still have friends? And will I still be fun? And all of that stuff. So I think the more we talk about it, the better.
Absolutely. I love that. And I laughed a little because I felt the same exact feelings. Like I had spent years mulling it over, that by the time I was like really in it and enjoying it, I didn't give a crap about what other people thought. I was proud of it. Really. I really was. And I didn't feel like that. Obviously 7 years ago, I would have been, so nervous to go to a party back then, but a lot already changed to the point to just feel really, really proud and just aligned with who you are and your choices. It doesn't matter what people think. So cool. So I love, your entire message and just all these different, areas of your life that you could apply it. I'm curious if someone really wants to, whether it's the stress of overworking or too much debt or not being, able to prioritize their health or anything like that. When you share this message of simplicity, there's just so much that it can be applied to. And obviously, you've spoken about all the different ways. So if someone is just looking to get started, where do you often guide them through? What areas do come first, or at least like what kind of framework do you outline for someone so that they have some kind of roadmap? And do you have like a community or any kind of format that you guide people through?
So it's very interesting because you could start in 100 different places and it's all connected. So at some point it's all going to happen. And I'm reluctant to say the best place to start is by decluttering, or the best place to start is in your closet, because there's benefits to starting where you think it's best to start, or where you're most curious about, or where you feel is causing the most stress. And if you make that decision on your own and stick with that one thing, the next thing will present itself. And what's so great about going that route, and look, I could give you 101 steps to simplify your life. I'm sure I've written a blog post about that somewhere. But the thing about deciding for yourself where you're going to start is that you start laying the groundwork for what this is really all about, which is trusting yourself. So that is why I encourage people to decide for themselves. But of course, like really think about why you want to do this. What is your wake up call to wanting to simplify your life? Because what that does is gives you the leverage to, I guess persevere sounds a little dramatic, but really that's what it is, because this isn't an overnight thing. This takes years. So if you know why you're doing what you're doing and what you're hoping for or hoping to learn in the process, it really helps move you forward. I do have a membership called the Simplicity Space, which you and I did an interview for, which I'm really excited to share soon. And that is, there is guidance, there is direction, but it's more support and encouragement as you navigate your own simplicity journey.
Mm. I love the like intuitive wisdom that you bestow upon anyone, right? To be able to choose their right path, and obviously with the guidance and the blogs and the resources and the tips. But I really think that's beautiful. And so, we've talked so much about, kind of letting go, or even decluttering sometimes is a word we think of in the physical space, right? Like declutter your stuff, but it works on the mind as well, right? Like to clutter the mind, the mindset, blocks and all the different emotions we don't want to carry with us on a day-to-day basis. But the whole point, like as we've been alluding to, is to really leave behind the things that you value the most, you love the most, that you prioritize, that make you feel good, that lives a life according to your values, according to your dreams, that you really start designing a life you love. So can you tell us a little bit about like what now is left in your life, and what are the things that you love, but with the things that you have made these hallmark pillars of your lifestyle?
That's a great question. And I don't really consider that too much, because I have a very full life. And if you walked in my home, you might think there's not a lot going on in terms of decor or extra trinkets or things like that. But I don't think you would say, oh, this extreme simplicity or minimalism going on here because I have what I need. I have what I enjoy, which would look different for someone that, for instance, has little kids in the house, or somebody who loves, I'm trying to think of something that I don't spend a lot of time doing, like loves baking cupcakes. They're going to have things in their home that I'm not going to have because I don't bake cupcakes a lot. I can't remember the last time I did. Not that I don't enjoy eating them from time to time. So I have what I need, and I'm just more mindful about having lots of space and time. So you'll never see my calendar jam-packed from, morning till evening. There's always big spaces of time, and it doesn't mean that time is there to be filled with an appointment, or just because I'm not busy doesn't mean I'm available to do other things. And that takes some mindset work too, because we're so used to like, oh, if I've got an open space, then the answer is yes. And for me, the answer is usually no, because I want that space. I want that space. I want it in my home. I want it on my calendar. And I think that we forget about all of that time and space we need just to process our own lives. It's a lot to think about. I never feel bored or like I'm not doing enough. I think the reality is that we're all doing a little too much usually. And so we have that room to pull back. I feel like I've gone way off the initial question, but the answer is that my life is full of all of the things that matter to me the most.
I love so much that you brought up time and calendars and just our commitments to different things. And I think no matter who you are in this modern world, like we have too much going on, right? But really interesting both for me and definitely a lot of members of this community is like you are an entrepreneur, you're a thought leader, you're an author, right? So there's so much extra that can come along with that. You have books, you have thousands and thousands of followers on Instagram. There's so many ways in our modern world that people can try to touch you, whether it's through DMs or messages or, be on this podcast or all the community things that you're running, launches, just there's so much that kind of goes into that world. So how have you found an ability to really prioritize the space and the calendar while still running? Basically, I'd call it an empire, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is 90% of those requests are a no. And it's not even all the time a response to say no. I have a great autoresponder on my email that took me many years to set up. But now that it's there, it basically says, thanks for reaching out. I'll be back in touch with you if you have a question, but here are the things I'm not responding to. And there are a handful of things I know I just am not going to do. And it's not that those things are bad, but they're not important to me and there's not room for me to do them. And I'll look at those yeses and nos over the course of a month. And if I see, like, if I'm a few days into the month and I've said yes enough for that month, then everything else is a no. Like the offer would have to be really, really enticing for me to say yes, whatever it may be. And then in terms of DMs and comments and communicating, that's really important to me. Like my business is built by the amazing people who are interested in simplifying their lives. And I want to connect with them. However, I'm not going to connect with them 24/7. The internet is open 24/7. I'm not. In fact, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm not open for social media anymore. Mostly not on the weekends. So really, I've got 3 days a week. And I would say I might spend 20 minutes on each of those days doing what I can, and then the rest can wait. So I'm not out here performing organ transplants or brain surgery. So we've got some time. And I think it's learning how to take that time and start removing the sense of urgency from things that aren't urgent that will help us all be a little more relaxed.
I love some of the tips you shared. I mean, super helpful for me, myself too. And The word that you just used, urgency, I think is so important, because I think that we have maybe this self-limiting belief underneath that if I don't do these things, I won't be successful, or it won't grow, or won't take off, or whatever it is, some kind of fear-based thought. Is that something you had to grapple with, or did you?
I think so. I think in the beginning, because I
Mm.
came from a career of responding immediately all the time to everybody as much as I possibly could, that I probably brought that into my business, and then slowly realized that I could back off a little bit. And now, after I think it's been 11 years, have more perspective on the fact that people would rather receive a thoughtful response from me versus like, I'm just trying to get through this email and check all this off the list. I don't want to do it like that anymore. And the only way for me to do that is to arrive at that email or that comment or that DM relaxed and not overwhelmed and not pressured, which means taking time off and not rushing any of this. And that has seemed to work. I mean, I have never, well, I won't say never, but I can't remember in recent history getting an email that is like, you took too long to get back to me. I don't like you anymore. That hasn't happened. I think people are too busy on their end to be, checking all the time as well. And I just understand now how distracted I am when I'm living in that space of checking, responding. I'm not getting anything done or nothing meaningful. So it was really time for like figuring that out, something different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just so interesting because obviously, like, we have the physical space, we have our, lifestyle, but like digital detox within itself is a whole other, like, we're all so, reachable now compared to, 50 years ago. It's crazy.
Right. Well, the only reason we're so accessible is not because there's internet, but because we make ourselves
Yeah.
accessible or not. Like, if I just close my computer and turn my phone off, I'm not accessible anymore. You can email me all you want, but you can't reach me until I open email. And so that's on me. I can't really be putting that blame on anyone else. If I feel like I'm getting too much email, that's on me because I'm checking it too much.
I love that shift of perspective, and also just this healthy sense of boundaries, because you deserve to take up space. You deserve to have that time. You deserve to decompress and rest and think, as you say. And I think sometimes even letting go of things, it really does bring up some of our deeper insecurities or deeper fears. And so your message is just so beautiful from so many different aspects of transforming your life and just prioritizing your needs, so that then you can be a better person. Like, that's the point too, is like you are able to not be so frazzled all the time, and you really get to connect and love the people in your life.
It's the only way that I can, serve people in my business and also my friends and family, most importantly. Like, the only way I can really show up for them is if I show up for myself first. And that's not a message we heard until a few years ago, that it was okay to do that. And I'm just going to keep like amplifying that. It is okay to show up for yourself first.
I love that. And any decision that you're embarking on, it's just such a core message for that. So appreciative of you. And I'm just curious, if people want to learn more, dive into your world, get your books, anything like that, where can people find you? What do you got going on?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is to subscribe to email at bemorewithless.com. And probably for social media, the place I'm most present is Instagram at bemorewithless.
I love that. I love that line that you have put together. It's such a good brand. Well, thank you, Courtney, so much. There's just so much wisdom you've dropped on us, and whatever angle you come at it from, I love how you were able to just unpeel, the onion, and just so many, I think, societal expectations or norms, that we grow up with, whether, like you said, it's debt or eating, whatever is available without being very intentional about it, all the stuff we accumulate in our lives, the digital stuff, and then alcohol as a habit as well. It's just these things, if we're not conscious, we'll build a life full of crap, right? That we might not want in our life.
So true.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much. So we'll put in the show notes, your website, your social links, and your books so that people can reach you. And just thank you again for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. I loved our conversation.